had to throw the serviceman off the job today. A guy from Baker Brothers come out to service my heat pump. They replaced the indoor air handler, but the system had leaked refrigerant, and I found the valves were not sealed. The caps were hand tight, and the Schrader port valve caps were hand tight. Could have leaked there, or it could have leaked elsewhere. So the serviceman came out and checked the system out. First thing he found was a bad capacitor to the compressor. Definitely was bad. It was swollen. It was the little one. There was two side by side. So he proceeded to replace that. It took him about 2 hours to change the capacitor. This guy was no mechanic, but he had some idea about air conditioning and heat pumps. He then proceeded to put some gas in the system and run it, and told me there's a leak in the outside coil. And was going to show me, I said, show me the leak. Well, as you can see, the breeze out here is blowing about 25 to 30 miles an hour. And let me switch faces. So here's where he said he found the leak, in this coil right in this area right here. He had his gauges hanging right here, hoses and all the refrigerant stuff stacked in front of this. But he was probing on this side of the coil with his sniffer and found a couple of blinks on his light about that area right there. The problem is, the breeze is blowing about 20-30 miles an hour. You can see the flag flicker over there occasionally. The compressor fan was running, so the air is going into the unit that direction, sucking in. And somehow, with him holding the probe right here on the outside, he could detect the leak. I did see it flash once or twice, occasionally, but that could be just noise in his system, and his detector was definitely not a continuous light or a continuous tone or anything as far as a leak. He says, it's just a super small microscopic leak. I said, that's pretty amazing that you can detect it on the outside of the coil. He had no idea what I was talking about. Checking for a leak on the entering air side of the condenser coil where the fan was running. So he had put some gas on it and had it running, and he was going to take his gauges off. Here's the service ports down here. Now the service ports on Friday, those caps on the valves, these things right here, caps and the little caps for where the hoses connect, were just hand tight. They weren't sealed. Those are designed to seal off the refrigerant from leaking around the stem of the valve or out the port of the valve. They're intended to be slugged up, have a polished surface, so they'll seal closed. But they were loose. So that definitely could be a source of leak. So he proceeded to disconnect his tank, and he started cranking those valve stems all the way up and all the way down like a crazy man. I says, what are you doing? He says, well, I got to bleed my valve set and everything. Yeah, I understand that. So he ran the suction line all the way down, which made no sense at all. Then he ran the liquid port all the way down, off. So he shut off both the liquid and suction lines. Then I think he realized something was wrong. He opened the suction port back up. The compressor was still running, and that sucked the gas out of his gauges. Then he backseated the suction line, took his gauges off, and took his hose off the high side, which did not leak. But the problem was, he had closed it off. He had screwed the stem all the way in and totally closed that side of the system off, and then proceeded to put the service cap on the outside, just like you see it right now. So I asked him, why do you have the, first of all, why did you set the service valves all the way in and then back them out? Why did you leave the liquid lines completely closed? He said, so I could bleed my gauges. I said, yeah, but you didn't backseat. You didn't screw them back and backseat them all the way back open again. He says, I know what I'm doing. That's how you bleed the line set. He says, no, it's not. You got the liquid line shut off. I said, obviously you don't know what you're doing. And his sniff test already proved that to me. He says, I'm asking you to please leave my property. You are incompetent and don't know how to service an air conditioning system. Of course, he got offended, and that was my intent. And so he proceeded to put the caps on tight and left. Meanwhile, he's still tightening things down. The compressor went in the pump down and shut off because it sucked all the Freon out of the house system and stored it in the unit because the liquid valve was shut off. After he left, I came out here and took the cap off, backed the valve open again, heard the gas shoot it back into the rest of the system, and back seated that liquid line back where it should be, all the way out against the seal in the out position, and put the caps back on. And then went in and proceeded to call Baker Brothers and told them what I thought of their service and that I would only pay for the capacitor.